Let's go on another little journey today, off the usual path. You might remember when I did this rehab of this old Soviet base that I made this sort of weird bridge for it, because nothing would really fit these strings, and I wanted to do something better than the floating bridge. And this was an idea that I've been sort of chasing down for a while, and this is my first time trying to make that idea a reality. Basically, one of the long-term goals for New Perspectives Music is to make everything in-house. I started making my own pickups, I do all these other things. A big step is, of course, making hardware, and bridges seemed like the best place to start, specifically for my Appear-on basses. So if you're not familiar with the Appear-on bass, the concept is a tree with strings. This is the original prototype, and it doesn't even really have a bridge. It's just a piece of wood carved into the body, which then evolved into this more functional, adjustable wooden bridge for the fretlesses. But then as the bass evolved and I started making fretted versions, I needed a bridge that was intonatable. And so what I had been using is these sort of Gibson-y style, but I had to heavily modify them, and they're not intonatable, or height adjustable individually, which always kind of bummed me out. This is what I've come up with, and this is the very first, besides that Russian bass, prototype of this. I'm going to show you a little bit about the journey and what I've been doing here, and then we'll give this a quick listen and see what the future brings. Right off the top, I want to give a huge shout out to SendCutSend.com, who I could not have done this project without them. They made it possible. They're a great company I've been working with for years, and all of my metal parts, for the most part, for square tools and my guitar building gets cut with them, and this project is no different. I was able to iterate and make several versions in small batches as I went along. Now, they offer a tapping service as well, but I can just do that myself. So in order to speed up the getting them in my hands and save a little money, I did my own tapping. And then they also, they come off of their laser cutter in pretty good shape, but I had this idea to go to Harbor Freight and get one of those inexpensive parts tumblers. I thought that would be a way to sort of soften the sharp edges on the parts and give me a nice finish. But when I took it out, I realized that there's a lot more work to do. I created for myself after taking it out of the parts tumbler to just sort of make them look good again. I did like how the edges sort of softened, that it got rid of the micro tabs that SendCutSend leaves, but it took me a while to get it back to the finish I looked, so I probably won't do that in the future, but maybe I will. I don't know. I have the thing now, so I'm sure I'll try it again, maybe with some different media. I thought that the rock tumbler would be a sort of easy way to get like a nice consistent finish, and would actually sort of soften these edges a little bit, which it did do, but it did make kind of getting the finish that I wanted a little bit more work. We'll jump ahead to this this finished one here. You can see that I didn't rock tumble, and you can see it's a similar, I don't think it's like this huge noticeable difference in the patina, but the big problem I had that I was concerned about is you see when this is locked down, I've adjusted this and I locked it down, and it's great. But when it's loose, this stuff happens, and it just feels like that would really bum me out if I was like trying to set my bass up and then it was like twisting on me and everything. So I was trying to avoid having to do any machining to try to minimize labor to keep the cost down. But I definitely need to put some kind of slot in here to keep these from spinning. Still back in the iteration process, this is a piece of scrap maple that I cut out a little jig to machine into some of my older failed versions of this bridge to see how slots would work, and I learned a little bit about the best way to sort of cut in these and how deep they need to be and stuff. So then I was ready to modify the shape a little bit and try again. With a fresh batch of parts from SendCutSend.com, I, instead of putting in the rock tumbler, decided to finish these pieces off the usual way, just sanding off the micro tabs and tapping and all that stuff like I did before. Taking a little more care to protect the finish as it comes from them to give myself less work instead of sort of starting from scratch like I did before. And then I created a better jig and some files that are set up so I can put either the 4-string or 5-string version bridge into it, and as long as I set my Z to the corner like I just did with my little Abbott CNC tool, I can put this thing anywhere on my board, and the way the files are set up, it'll be good to go. So you'll see I'm doing like a rotating cavity pass here, and you see it doing a much shallower pass than I did before. I think I need to change back to straight, so I'll get a better looking sort of witness marks in the metal, which you'll see at the end. But you can see that really small amount of aluminum I took off in multiple passes. I think it's 1/100th of an inch is all I took, and that's enough to keep those pieces from sliding around. Not a ton of work for me, and just a little bit more cleanup. One of the big problems people like me have with trying to do things like this is keeping the cost down. With the whole import market the way it is, you can get really fantastic bridges and other parts like this made overseas that work really well and look really good. And for people like me who want to try to do everything in-house, I still have those price points that are sort of set by this system that I have to think about. Obviously, I can't do stuff for, pennies on the dollar like they can there, but I need to at least, make it so my overall cost isn't astronomical, but you're still getting something handmade in the USA at a higher quality. That's not too expensive to not make sense in the modern market. So a lot of the hardware that you do find is actually cast metal, which has its pros and cons, and I really wanted to make this stuff out of solid aluminum, not sand cast things here in the shop. And in the future I might get into sand casting, but this is where I'm starting now. And you'll see, also I want to utilize readily available hardware like these set screws and then these brass screws that are slotted. And all I have to do is slightly modify the slot to hold the string, and I can still use a screwdriver. The slots are deep enough, and it gives me this sort of thing that I was chasing of having the string sitting on brass, which I wanted, and also not sunken into the bridge, but rather more like a violin, sort of arched over these brass pieces. But now we've got to try it out and see if it works. This is a pretty generic Apeiron 4-string fretted passive bass that is available for sale over at apeironbass.com or at newperspectivesmusic.com with this prototype bridge number 1 on it. For anybody that wants to be my guinea pig, you can get a great deal, and this bass is marked down a little bit because of this new bridge. I want someone to go out and try it and really play it. And so it's set up to work on the posts that are the same size as that sort of Gibson-y style. So in theory, you could swap this out with basses that have that type of bridge. And then, of course, the big question was, besides playability, was setup. And the setup was pretty easy. I had no issues fine-tuning the action, and I had no issues intonating it. And, of course, this bass is low, so I have the post all the way down. But if you were playing this thing on an arched bass, I do have those posts into the body, so you could actually raise the whole bridge up and then micro-tune your action for each string. It all went on easy. It intonated easy. So the big questions are, how does it sound? Is there enough sustain? And are the strings going to fall out of these little posts? So let's find out. Let's check out the sustain on this thing. Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to be here all day. Sustain for days. So we'll just say, yeah, it's got sustain. Sounds fine. And then the big concern, of course, is, are they going to pop out of here? And so far, I feel like I'm hitting it pretty hard, and I think you'd have to really try. That's staying in. I can pull it out, of course, which is actually kind of a cool effect. But when you're hammering on it, it seems okay. And I could also probably make that slot a little bit deeper, and make it sit in there a little better. I was really trying to keep them up on top, though. Yeah, I think it's going to work just fine. Focus. I've currently prototyped a 4-string version here, and then also a 5-string version. And I have on my workbench a couple of Pierons in the process that I will be putting these bridges onto. The other thing I'm going to work on is, so with the Pieron, I do a string through, and I have these plates that I've been making, for years that hold the strings there. But if you wanted to do a top mount, I'm going to make a top mount piece, which will be showing, I'm sure, in future videos as I continue to make these Pierons. There's going to be some other new things I'll share with you about those, and we'll probably see these bridge pop up. I also have some guitar bridge stuff I'm working on that's a little bit harder because it's smaller. I'm really trying to find this way to make it stuff that I can use regular hardware and not get too bogged down in the time of making it, so it can still be something that's feasible, without like costing everybody $1 million. And then the other thing that I'm going to work on is I think I can do better tool paths for creating this little slot that these things go into so they'll look a little better. What I did is I kind of made a pocket like this where it kind of went around and around, and so you can see some sort of tool witness marks there, whereas if I had done straight paths going beyond it, everything would look a little cleaner. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to say, hey, it's great. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, hey, it sucks. I'm looking for like real, like concrete thoughts, not just like it sucks, but like it sucks why, or it's not just it's great, but it's great why. I'd really be curious to hear your thoughts, and if you think that there's a market for these beyond my base itself. As of now, I don't really have any plans to necessarily sell these individually because they're not going to necessarily fit other people's existing bases, but for other builders out there that might be interested in doing something like this, I don't know, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. So looking forward to hearing it, and like I said, there will be more about these in the future and these upcoming Pierons and some other bases and stuff, and I'll talk to you about it then too. All right, be good.